In the silent grandeur of the Harrington mansion, where chandeliers hung like frozen tears and expensive silence wrapped around every corner, the last thing anyone expected was for a millionaire's life to be shaken by a child no older than 4. Alexander Harrington, known for his wealth, power, and the haunting scar carved across the right side of his face, had built a reputation for being cold, distant, and unapproachable. People whispered that the scar had stolen the softness from him, that the men who once smiled at the smallest things had been replaced by someone carved from stone. His employees barely spoke around him, afraid one wrong word would cost them their job. But amid that world of fear and discipline lived Elena, the new maid, a widow who carried grace like a survival skill and humility like armor. She had a daughter named Alina, bright-eyed, gentle, the kind of child whose purity could soften the storm inside anyone, if she ever got the chance to be close to them. Elena always warned her, "Stay away from the master. He doesn't like anyone near him." But fate often ignores warnings. One calm afternoon, Alexander was sitting in the private lounge going over documents, the ticking of a golden clock the only sound in the room. Elena had slipped away for a moment to bring fresh linens, and Alina, clutching her tiny stuffed rabbit, wandered inside with innocent curiosity guiding her steps. She had seen Alexander before from afar, always stiff and distant, but today he looked lonely. Even a child could tell. When he finally noticed her, he stiffened. "Where is your mother?" he asked, voice clipped, expression unreadable. Alina didn't answer. Instead, she walked straight toward him, fearless in the way only a child could be, and before Alexander could move, her tiny hand touched his scar with such soft curiosity that the world seemed to stop. Alexander froze. No one touched that side of his face. Not since the accident. Not since the screams, the shattering glass, the fire, and the surgeons whispering he would never look the same again. Adults avoided looking at it entirely or stared with pity. But this little girl, she touched it like it wasn't something ugly. Like it wasn't something broken. Her warm fingers rested gently against the raised, twisted lines on his skin, and for a moment, Alexander's breath stopped. He expected fear in her eyes. He expected her to pull back. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered with heartbreaking innocence, "Does it hurt?" The question pierced him deeper than the flames ever had. His throat tightened painfully, a storm of memories crashing inside him. Before he could speak, before he could even blink away the shock, Elena rushed in, gasping as she saw her daughter touching the one place no one dared. "Alina. No, come here." Elena choked out, her face white with fear. She grabbed the little girl, apologizing endlessly, her voice shaking. "Sir, I'm so sorry, she didn't mean, please forgive her, please forgive me, I'll talk to her, I'll keep her away." But Alexander raised a hand, stopping her words midair. Not angry. Not cold. Confused. Shaken. Human. "It didn't hurt," he whispered, still trying to understand his own reaction. Alina peered at him from her mother's arms, her soft brown eyes shining with empathy far beyond her age. She whispered again, barely audible, "Mama says scars mean someone survived something very scary. I think you're very strong." And that was the sentence that shattered and rebuilt Alexander Harrington in a single heartbeat. For years, he had carried the scar as a symbol of loss, of who he used to be, of what he failed to protect. No one had ever called it strength. No one had ever looked at it with admiration. Flashbacks slammed into him, his wife trapped in the burning car, his desperate attempt to save her, the explosion that tore across his face as he dragged her out, only to lose her moments later. He had blamed himself for everything. He had stopped living the day she died. And yet this tiny child, with her soft voice and gentle touch, had just told him he was strong. That he survived. That he was something more than his pain. Elena was trembling, expecting the worst. But instead of the anger she feared, Alexander simply stood and knelt in front of Alina, leveling himself with her height. His voice shook as he asked, "Who told you that scars mean strength?" Alina smiled the kind of smile that could warm the coldest December. "Mama. She says when people break but still keep loving, that makes them strong too." Tears. Real tears, something Alexander hadn't allowed himself in years, burned behind his eyes. He swallowed them because he didn't remember how to cry. Elena's eyes widened with confusion and fear, unsure how to read the moment. But Alexander spoke again, this time to her. "Your daughter sees things others don't." And then, something no one in the entire mansion would have believed, Alexander invited Alina to sit beside him. He pushed his documents aside and gave her his full attention as she talked about her stuffed rabbit, her favorite color, and how she wanted to become a doctor so she could fix people who hurt on the outside and inside. Elena stood frozen, unable to understand how her child had melted a man no one had ever been able to thaw. Servants passing by nearly dropped trays when they saw the millionaire smiling, actually smiling, as Elena climbed onto his knee like she had known him forever. That afternoon changed everything. Alexander began seeking Elena's company, and in doing so, he began healing parts of himself he had buried in darkness. He learned to laugh again. He learned to breathe again. He learned what kindness felt like again. Elena watched all of it silently, her heart aching with gratitude but also fear of the world that separated the wealthy and the poor. But Alexander broke that barrier himself the day he told her, "Your daughter saved me without even knowing it. And you raised her that way." Slowly, something deeper grew in the quiet moments, the shared smiles, the warm conversations, the mutual healing between two adults who had both known loss. Love didn't appear loudly. It appeared in the way Alexander brought Alina her favorite cookies, in the way Elena soothed the nightmares he never admitted having, in the way Alina held both their hands as if she had connected two worlds made for each other. And through it all, Alexander kept hearing the words that rewrote his life, "I think you're very strong." Sometimes, it isn't a miracle that changes a man. Sometimes, it's the touch of a child who sees his wounds not as something monstrous, but as proof of his survival. And as Alexander finally allowed himself to feel happiness again, he realized something important, that the viewers listening to this story might also carry scars of their own, visible or invisible, and that healing often begins with one small act of kindness. So if you are watching this story right now, remember, your scars mean you survived. You are stronger than you think. And if this story touched your heart even a little, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because more powerful, emotional, life-changing stories are waiting for you, stories that remind you that hope, healing, and miracles are real, and that sometimes, like Alina, you might also be the miracle in someone's life.